Hi everyone, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian, and I'm streaming to you from beautiful Budapest here in Central Europe. I hope everybody has had a productive and healthy week and is looking forward to a great weekend. Hi Michael Fan. Hi Kyber Moman. Nice to see our members in this class. This is a members chat class. Everybody's welcome to watch. To become a member, just click the join button beside the subscribe button. There are 4 levels of membership. Choose the right one for you. In this class, we are looking at task 1 writing, and we're going to compare some tables. Now, one of our members sent me a request for table comparison, and I couldn't do that one because that question wasn't quite accurate for IELTS, but I have found one where we have a couple of tables for comparison. It's an official IELTS question, so it'll be a good one for today. Hi Nazir, hi Abhishek, hi Janil. While we wait for some more of your peers, this lesson is brought to you by aehelp.com. For academic IELTS success, visit us there. And for general IELTS success, visit us at gieltshelp.com. That's general IELTS help.com. On both of these websites, we have loads and loads of materials for you to get better band scores. If you join today, you can use this code R4TYJ to get a 20% discount. Okay, so use that code. I'll show you those sites real quick. Osman, good to see you in class. Hassan, nice to see you as well. Our websites, they look like this. This is the academic one here. You can click that big red button to join the premium package. For the general IELTS, it's this one here at gieltshelp.com. Click that big red button. Get access to all of our HD video content, fully interactive course, original practice exams, and apps. So lots and lots for you there. If you have questions, don't be shy. Send me an email, adrian@aehelp.com. Hi, Rajveer. Nice to see you in the class. All right, students, so let's get into it. Task 1 right now coming up. And then after this class, in about 90 minutes, we will have listening parts 3 and 4. That will be for an all-chat class where everybody can join in on the chat, continuing from yesterday's parts 1 and 2. I believe that was exam number 4 that we started. But right now it is task 1 writing for the academic IELTS. Okay, so this is Academic English Help channel, so we focus more on the academic here. Good afternoon, Dr. Krishna. All right. So again, students, remember that you always should practice your IELTS writing at least a couple times before your real exam with a full practice test, because you should know, of course, that you have your listening and reading section before your writing section. So by the time you get to the writing section, you've been doing the English exam, you've been doing the IELTS for almost 2 hours. Okay, and at that time, the brain starts to fatigue in another language, especially. It's a lot of work for the brain. So you definitely want to practice this at home, where you do a listening, a reading, and then you start writing. It's more challenging. Okay, so make sure to do that. And you open up your writing section to your exam, and then you see a question like this: IELTS Task 1 Writing. You should spend about 20 minutes on this task. I said this many times before, do not spend more than 20 minutes for task 1, because you have 1 hour, and task 1 is worth 1/3 of your writing mark. Okay, so, and always start with task 1. Sometimes students ask me, should I start with task 1 or task 2? Because task 2 is worth more. Start with task 1, because task 1 should be a bit easier if you know what you're doing. Okay, all right. So let's read the question. Let's read this question. And I think it was Bisser that sent me this, so hopefully you'll watch this class, if not today, later. All right, so here we go. Let's read this carefully. The following tables compare full and part-time workers in 3 European countries. as well as give European averages. Report the main features and make comparisons and contrasts where relevant. Okay, so we're paying attention to the question. And then it says you should write at least 150 words. At least, students, means minimum. There is no maximum. It's amazing how many students think that at least means maximum. That doesn't mean maximum. That means minimum. So to get your task completion mark, a full mark, you need to write at least 150 words. And it is important to know, keep this in mind, that most Band 7 to Band 9, well, I would say Band 9 definitely, most Band 7 to Band 9 Task 1 responses are closer to 200 words. Perhaps as much as 230 words. Okay, so for somebody who has really fluent, high-level writing skills, writing 220 words in 20 minutes is not that challenging. Okay, so for a Band 9 level candidate, 200 words accurately for task 1 is not an overly challenging feat. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right. You'll see, Kyber, what it means European average. Okay, so let's take a look. When you read the question, don't get too worried about confusion, because you'll be looking at the table, so it'll make more sense when you look at it. Okay, so here we have our two tables. Okay, and you should always pay attention to the hierarchy of information. Okay, the hierarchy of information clearly is number 1 here. Okay. Number 2 here, number 3 here. Okay, so that's the hierarchy of information here. Keep that in mind. Okay, a lot of students get confused. They look at too much too quickly. Don't do that. Just keep it simple. So in the first table, we have the average number of hours for full-time workers in 2002. In the second table, we have the average number of hours for part-time workers in 2002. So the difference is only this piece here, full-time and part-time. The year is the same. We quickly take note of that. And then we have country and country. And so in the countries, we have Greece, we have Netherlands, we have the UK, and then we have the European average. So what does that mean, European average? What do you think that means? Let's say who's paying attention. Bisser, I think it's good that you're in the class. I think you asked me for this kind of table comparison question, so we're going to work on this today. Okay. All right. So what does it mean? Give me a definition for European average. Okay, what's another way to say that? All right. So this is where you want to think about your paraphrasing. There's definitely another way. So Bisser says it means the average sum up for all the countries on the continent of Europe, right? It's not the European Union. So if it says Europe, Europe is not European Union. Okay, there are countries in Europe that are not in the European Union, Charlie, so careful. So this would mean the mean for all European countries. Or if you don't want to write European countries, you could say the mean for the European continent. Right? Because Europe, in fact, is the continent. Okay? So Bizer says, yep, there are around 40 countries in Europe and only 27 are EU. So it doesn't say the EU average, it says the European average. Students, be really careful in academic writing. You can, in task 2, make up information, but in task 1, your information has to be accurate. Making information mistakes, like writing European Union instead of Europe, is considered an information mistake, and that will cost you marks. Okay, so careful about that. All right, so here we're talking about the mean. Mean doesn't mean angry here or a bad guy. It means the average. Okay, so another definition of the word mean is average. Mean, average. They have the same meaning. Okay, so just remember that. Mean, average. Meaning of mean, average. Mean is used especially in statistics when you're talking about statistics, and of course here we're looking at statistics. So, okay, fine. So here we have the 3 countries, and then of course here we have the genders, right? So we have women and men, okay? So we have the genders. And then of course we have the data. So we've observed this. Now, let's get into writing our overview. And for the overview, the first step, of course, is to paraphrase the question with a little bit more detail. Okay? So let's do that now. So you've had a good look at the tables. You know what the information is that's represented. So take a look at the question. And to start the overview, which is also the introduction, as I very clearly explained, I think last week, let's write the introductory or overview paragraph. And students, there is no such thing as an IELTS essay. This is an expository essay that's used in the IELTS. I'll get you back on camera here in just a second. Threat not. Okay. So sometimes students ask what's the right essay for IELTS, and that's kind of the wrong question. The better question is, what is a correct expository essay for task 1? Okay, and then you'll avoid all of that confusion that's being taught around the world. So now we're writing the introduction, which is also your overview, and for that, it's 2 parts. Okay, first is paraphrase the question with details, and then second is give the most noticeable feature. Okay, so those are the 2 parts of the first paragraph, which is basically your introduction. It includes your overview and your main features. So there you have the question. I'm going to do the same, so let's do this together. Okay, I'm going to do the same, and then we'll compare. There's different ways to write this, of course. It's not just one way, but you should pay attention to clear grammar, paraphrasing, choice of synonyms, okay? Dr. Krishna says, yeah, mean, median, and mode. It's 6th grade math. Yeah, exactly, Dr. Krishna. Knowing the mean, median, and mode are very good words for task 1 writing. Absolutely. So, and the countries, if some of you are thinking for those details, are Greece, Netherlands, and UK. Greece is just Greece, but you can write Netherlands as Holland, and you can even paraphrase UK as Britain. And I see some paraphrasing coming up there, which is great. I'll look at those in just a minute. I'll just finish my first sentence here. okay? And mean, just like average, can actually be counted. So you can say means, okay? It's a countable word. In this case, it's a countable noun, okay? All right, and then we look at the main feature. Before I get into that, let me give you a little bit of feedback on what you have written so far, okay? All right. So, Kyber says, these two given tables show the contrast of average numbers of hours worked by both males and females in half and full-time positions in Greece, Netherlands, and the United Kingdom in 2002. Very good, Kyber. Just a couple of small mistakes there. Pay attention to those, okay? As well as provides the comparison of the European averages. You don't need the word comparison in there, Kyber. That's what you're going to do, okay? All right, Hassan writes, the two given tables illustrate full and part-time work for men and women, which compare the average working time in Europe in 2002, and to be more specific, in Greece, Netherlands, and the UK. Very nice paraphrasing, Hassan. Beautifully done. Nice additional details. Very good. That's your band 8, band 9 level first sentence. Absolutely. Rajveer Singh says the given spreadsheets, nice paraphrasing for tables, Rajveer. The given spreadsheets depict the data of regular and temporary employees for men and women in 3 nations, Greece, Netherlands, and the UK, as well as across all of Europe in the year 2002. Beautiful paraphrasing, Rajveer. Really nicely done. Name the number of tables. So if you see 2 tables, say the 2 given spreadsheets, right? Each of those could be 1 spreadsheet. All right, but very well done. Very nice paraphrasing. Okay. All right, Charlie says the following 2 tables depict the average number of working hours for both full-time and part-time workers in a week, specifically for 3 European countries, namely Greece, Netherlands, UK, and the averages in Europe. Yeah, Charlie, very good. You don't need the word namely because you have the word specifically. So specifically, Charlie, is the same as namely. Just choose one, not both. Okay. Careful with your words, students. Try to really work hard not to have extra words that are unnecessary, because you want to maximize the utility of your word choice, okay? That's really what separates the highest levels of writing, is choosing the right words and not having any unnecessary words, okay? Be really careful. A lot of students tend to include words that are just not necessary, so careful with that. Okay, Bisser says the 2 tables compare the total amount of hours for full-time and part-time male and female workers in 2002 in Greece, Netherlands, United Kingdom, and the European average. Yeah, Bisser, good. Careful with your spelling on Greece and European, Bisser. You will lose marks for those, especially because it's given in the table. Okay. Jainil, the given 2 tables elicit the percentage of part-time and full-time workers in 3 Schengen countries, Greece, Netherlands, UK, and the European averages in 2002. Yeah, the Schengen meaning part of the European Union. I don't know, Janil, if that's important to include, but it's a nice use of vocabulary. Also, are we sure it's percentages, Janil? Careful with using that word. I don't actually think it's percentages, it's hours. So 39.9 hours, 38 hours, 37 hours. So you want to be careful there, okay? Making a mistake like calling it percentages instead of hours, that could be a devastating mistake, Janil. That could really cost you. It could drop your writing section score by half, if not a full band, if you were to write that word again and again. So you really got to pay attention to the data that you're reporting on, okay? Careful, careful. All right. So here's my opening sentence. The given two tables compare the full and part-time employment in Greece, Holland, and Great Britain in 2002 for both men and women, as well as the European means. All right, so I'm keeping it concise. Don't start too fancy. You want to show good, clear writing, especially in the beginning. Okay, and part-time and full-time are hyphenated. Okay. Now notice how I didn't write full-time. I just wrote full and part-time because this also modifies that. It's one way to simplify. Okay. All right. So the next step, of course, is to take a look and just express the main feature. So what do we see? Just like looking quickly at this data, what's the most observable piece of information that we notice? So what is kind of like, oh, okay, that's very clear. That we don't need to go into little details or anything, but very clear pieces of information. So without me spoiling it for you, what do you notice right away? What's the most obvious piece of information here? Okay. So for the most obvious, hint, I'd be looking probably at the averages. Okay. So what do we notice right away? What's the most noticeable? Kyber says the highest hours, Greece and Holland are on top. I think looking at countries would be too much detail. Again, remember what I said, students, about the hierarchy. So full-time, part-time, that's your level 1. That's your highest level of importance, okay? That's your priority 1 level. Priority 2 level would be your countries, but countries here would be your averages, so that would be your priority 2, and priority 3 would be your genders. Or you could switch 2 and 3, they're fairly close, but those are your headings, right? So country, women, men, that's your column headings, and that's your table title. So think table title, that's number 1, and then your column headings, that's always going to be your number 2, okay? Everything else that's in here is lower on the hierarchy. So what would be the interesting? Abhishek says men work more hours than women. Is that true in both cases, Abhishek? So Abhishek is on the right track. So Abhishek says, wait a second, if we're talking about that, then perhaps looking at this piece of information and this piece of information would be perhaps the most pertinent. Okay, and Pooja, I see you're stepping in here as well. Students, don't use italics in the chat because for some reason Google doesn't like that, or YouTube doesn't like it, and it automatically puts it on hold. Okay, so don't use italic, use regular print. Okay, so if you look at these, okay, don't look at this data yet here. For your main feature, I would just look at these 4 pieces here. Okay, if you visualize this as a bar graph or as a line chart, those would pop out at you the most as the averages. So what do you notice? Okay, so Hassan says men work more hours in both full and part-time in Greece, UK, and Netherlands, but show different case. Okay, Hassan, you're kind of on the right track. All right. Bisser says overall it can be seen that men in Greece work more than European average. Bisser, that's details. That's going to come in your body paragraph, not in your introduction. Okay. Pooja says in the full-time job, men work more than women on average, just slightly, right? A little bit, just a little bit. 1 hour, but I mean, that's 1 hour per week, right? And 1 extra hour per week, if you think 52 weeks in the year, it's 52 extra hours per year. So yearly, it's quite a bit. Okay. Charlie says full-time men are greater than women. Part-time, it's the opposite. Very good. Very good. Okay, very good, Charlie. That's what you notice. That's your main feature. Okay. So careful with data. Think about hierarchy first. Okay. So this information for us is much higher level than looking at individual countries' information. Is that clear, everyone? So the European averages for part and full-time compared men to women is a much more important piece of data than looking at the specifics of Greece, Netherlands, and UK within those genders. Is that clear? Yeah? You guys are good there? Okay. So that should be your most important or main feature that you notice right away. Okay, so write that sentence. Okay. So no details, no numbers. It's just the introduction, right? We'll get into that in the body paragraphs. All right. So all I want you to do is just in very clear, quote unquote, simple words, explain this difference in full and part-time difference of averages with genders. So Rajveer's already on. Rajveer, I have a feeling you even practiced. That's great. So Rajveer says, at first glance, it is clear that men had the same or more working hours than women in all three mentioned countries. No. Detail, Rajveer. Look at the averages. Okay? We can get into that more so in the body paragraphs. But for right now, let's key in the average, right? Which covers 40 countries, including those three countries. That's a more pertinent or higher level importance. So at first look, it is clear that men worked more hours on average across all of Europe in full-time jobs, as where the inverse is true for part-time positions. Okay, so that would be my main feature. Okay, all right, so I'm going to move this underneath my table now so you'll clearly see the overview while I wait for you to also complete this. Okay, so here we go. This is my overview and introductory paragraph. And this is your way to a Band 9 score, all right, and your analysis. So here we go. The given two tables compare full and part-time employment in Greece, Holland, and Great Britain in 2002 for both men and women, as well as the European means. At first look, it is clear that men worked more hours on average across all of Europe in full-time jobs, as where the inverse is true for part-time positions. Okay, and the inverse, that makes it clear for the reader that in part-time positions, men work more than women. Okay, so that would be the sentence. All right, so I'm waiting for your sentences as well, and I'll keep going a little bit here so we can move along. The next part of your essay is the analyses. It's plural for analysis. Okay. E instead of an I is plural. So analyses, plural, multiple analysis, and that's your body paragraph. Okay, and for that, we're going to look for 5 to 6 interesting points for comparison. Okay. And it's easy to start because what you want to do is you want to start with a deeper explanation of your main feature. And this is why it's so important to get that main feature correct so that you can start correctly for your analysis. Hi, Samuel. Sid here. Welcome to our group of members. Send me an email so I can hook you up with your exclusive videos later. All right. Charlie says, at a glance, it is clear that European average working hours for men is higher than women full-time workers, whereas in case of part-time workers, the scenario is the complete opposite. Yeah, you don't even need the word complete, Charlie, just opposite, okay? Especially for expository essays, Charlie, we don't need too many qualitative words like complete. It's a little bit more mechanical. That would be more for task 2. Persuasive writing, you'll find there are more qualitative words like the complete opposite is true. But in expository writing, it's more mechanical. It's more quantitative, right? That's where we're really kind of sticking to just defining what we see clearly. So you don't need complete opposite, just opposite is enough, all right? Save those words, Charlie, because you can use those words for more analysis that will get you more points, okay? Especially when you have so much information like in these 2 tables. Students, for these 2 tables, if you're fast, you could easily write a 250-word essay, okay? All right. Pooja says, on first look, okay, not first sight. I know that sounds like it's correct, Pooja, but it's unnatural. So on first sight, no, awkward. On first look, it is seen because it's passive, right? It is seen that men worked slightly more than women in full-time jobs, while the case is reversed for part-time jobs. Yeah, and full-time, part-time are hyphenated, students, okay? They're hyphenated. Abhishek, at first glance, men and women. Men slightly higher than women in full-time average hours, whereas in part-time means women are ahead of men. Okay, Abhishek, a couple of mistakes there. Overall, not bad. Take out the men and women additive clause with the commas in the beginning. You don't need that. Okay. All right. So far, so good, students. Let's get into these 5, 6 interesting points now. So this is where you definitely do not just start writing sentence after sentence when you have this kind of table comparison. You have to circle and identify your main points, okay? So we already talked about the 1 hour difference here. Okay, so that's fine. It's about an hour. Please don't write 1.2 hours. It's unnecessarily roughly an hour. Okay, and here it's clearly 2 hours. So that's going to be my point number 1 in my analysis. Okay, now, what is my second comparison? So we've got our number 1. This is why you want your main feature to be accurate, so you can open up your body paragraph with a very, very clear sentence. And then you need points 2, 3, 4, 5, which each create their own sentence. Okay? What is that? So what would be my second point here? Okay? And now is where you should start looking for most and least. Yeah, Kyber, very good. Kyber's like, highest, I think. Yeah, Kyber, be confident. So this is where you start looking for most and least comparisons within these. Okay, so Hassan says, clearly we can see that the highest numbers for full-time is in Greece, right? So when you're looking at tables, students always think that the top table, so this is your first table, this is your second table. First table full-time, it's probably higher level of importance than the second table, so you should start with the top, not the bottom. And definitely this is number 1 here, so you would take that. And then for part-time, we have the same, right? So Greece is the highest for both men and women for both part and full-time in this given year. So that's still part of number 2, if you will. So number 1 is here. Number 2 is there. What's our number 3? Number 3, it would make sense that we would compare the lowest, right? And the lowest is the UK for full-time, right? So let me use a different notation here. Triangles. And by the way, it's not a bad idea to do it like this, students. So use different kinds of notations. So see here, I used a box. Here I'm using a triangle. So it's very simple for my eye to catch this. Of course, other ways that you could do it as a diamond. And then, of course, you can do circles as well so that you can see those differences very quickly. And that allows you more time to think about your English and your sentences rather than trying to figure out the data over and over again. So the lowest is the UK for full time. So that would be my point number 3. And then, of course, I want to check, is that true also for part-time? But I can see that it's not. It's true for the UK for women for part-time, but it's not true for men. Men, it's actually the Netherlands where you have a little bit less than for the UK. So that would be my point 3/point 4. Okay? And that's quite a bit of information there. Now, of course, point 5, we could compare Netherlands. So what's going on in Netherlands as well, right? It's the kind of the average in between. Also, of course, we can compare these 3 countries to the averages. So that's the other one. So here I'm just kind of rolling along with statistical analysis, right? So when we compare these 3 countries with the average, they're relatively close for women, and they're relatively close for men, except with Greece, where in Greece you have quite a bit of working hours for men, 2.5 more or 2 more than the average, right? So that could be your point 6. Now, at this stage, students, so once I'm at this level where I'm at my 6th point of analysis, I'm getting into my band 8, band 9 level writing. Okay, is that clear? I hope that's clear. If you're not confident that you can do a band 8, band 9, and you only need a band 7 for your university, please don't overdo your analysis for task 1 because you're going to take time from your task 2, or you will write lower quality, and that's not good. Your goal is to write high quality in 20 minutes, okay? High quality, 20 minutes. That's your goal. So if you're not sure that you can do a band 8, band 9, then don't start worrying about these kinds of comparisons like Greece to the average. That would be my number 6. And then number 7, you might compare something like this, where women in these 3 countries are quite a bit lower than the average, okay, which is 34 for Europe. So Europe for women, it's 34. These countries are all under 30. You might even make that 6, looking at it now, and make this one 7, okay? All right, so lots and lots of information there, okay? Let's start with number 1, which is the average hours in a little bit more detail. So still not countries here, just the averages in more detail. So 1 hour difference for full-time with men and 2 hours difference with women in part-time, okay? Again, you don't necessarily need to write all these numbers like 34, 32. It's up to you if you'd like to, okay? So there's lots of comparisons there, but don't overdo the numbers, okay? So let's get into writing the body now, okay? So here we go. Just go ahead, write. I'll take a look at what you're writing as we're going through these steps. I'm sure different students, different members have different speeds to process, to write. So just go ahead and do it, okay? And we'll compare. I'm going to do the same, and I'll keep looking at the chat, and we'll keep going back to the table. Okay, so here we go. I'll talk a little bit and I'll also be silent a little bit so you can do some thinking. So in more detail, men worked an hour longer each week in full-time jobs than women in 2002. However, in part-time employment, women worked 2 hours more than men on average. Okay, now here I just separated it into two sentences. You can actually join this type of sentence with a semicolon, comma. Okay, just make sure to use, of course, a lowercase h in this case. All right, so that would be your first point of comparison. All right, now Pooja says, taking further insight, there's a difference of about 1 hour in full-time working men and women, while it goes up to 2 hours in the case of part-time workers for women. Okay, Pooja, finish that sentence, otherwise it's misinformation. Okay, for women, time workers or full-time female workers. So Pooja, if you just put the word female before the word workers in that last sentence, you'll be in a much better sentence. Okay. Dr. Krishna is asking a good question. Dr. Krishna is asking, how often do IELTS exams have diagrams instead of charts, tables? It's actually really balanced, Dr. Krishna. So let's say you go and sit the IELTS exam 6 times. It's a very good chance that one time you'll have a table, one time you'll have a line graph, one time you'll have pie charts, one time you'll have bar charts. So they tend to kind of switch it up, and it's basically impossible to guess what your next exam will have. So you could have a bar chart this week, another bar chart next week, and then for the next 3 weeks you could have tables, and then you could have diagrams, tables, flow charts, bar charts, switching it up. They do that because they want to keep people on their toes. So you just have to know all of them, Dr. Krishna. You have to know all of them. And that's because in school and university, there's a very good chance that you will deal with at least 3, 4 different types of these types of questions in your studies, okay, if not all of them. All right, good question, by the way. All right, Hassan, I like your paraphrasing. So Hassan says, Augustan men and women work the longest full-time hours at 42.5 hours for men and 39.9 for women, while part-time work, Greece was again the highest country at 30 hours for men and 29.3 for women. I wish I could just copy-paste that for my next bit of analysis, Hassan, because that's perfect. So you're starting with point 2. That's my next point here as well. So when looking at the specific nations, Greece had the longest working hours for both part and full-time jobs, not only for men, but also for women. And here, I took the average comparison and said, you can do it after, but here you might say that, okay, in fact, men worked 2.5 hours more than the European average, right, for full time. So, in fact, men worked 2 hours more than the average of the continent at 42.5 hours, I believe. Yeah. 42.5 hours. Okay. Now, of course, we're going to use the word hours several times in this essay. So we don't want to keep writing the word hours. We want to abbreviate that. Okay, abbreviations are very, very important for task 1, efficiency. And you want to use abbreviations for words that are redundant, in this case, hours. Okay, all right. Now, in contrast, British citizens worked the least number of hours. Whoop, mishit there. Except for, okay, so again, using human language, right? Remembering those little diagrams, right? Except for part-time men, which were slightly lower for Netherlands, right? Okay. Except for men in part-time positions, which was slightly lower for Holland at 28.2 hours, I believe it was. Okay, all right, so that would be my next sentence there. So here I'm doing a little bit of combination between my points of analysis, but the only reason I'm able to do this, so don't fool yourselves here, students, the only reason I'm able to do these kind of slight combinations among those points of analysis is because I identified those points of analysis. Is that clear? This is where I want you to reflect that you're following and paying attention and give me a thumbs up. So the only reason that I can combine these concepts of Holland having a little bit less here and the fact that Greece had a higher average than the European average for full-time is because I very carefully identified those points of comparison. Then you might realize as you're writing that you can make a little bit of a combination, or you can add that little bit of detail easily, but you can only do that if you go through these steps step by step in a structured way. Okay, Khyber, Abhishek, thank you for reflecting that. That's very important. So there's no way to do that if I just start clipping away and writing these points. That would be really confusing. Okay, all right. Okay, so we'll do a little bit more. Okay, so I have my point 1, I have my point 2, I have my point 3. Now I want to get into my point 4, which is Netherlands. Okay, so Netherlands 38 here, 38 for men, 29 here, 28 here. So the Netherlands had the same number of full-time hours. Let's not forget that hyphen. For men and women in 2002 at 38. And just a slight difference in part-time work show you a little trick here. So at 29.2 for women and 28.3 for men, respectively. At roughly 29 hours for women and 28 hours for men, respectively. Okay, 28 hours and 29 hours and 28 hours for women and men, respectively, shortening it up. Okay. All right. So that was a little trick that I wanted to show you there using the word respectively, where you can reorganize the information this way. Okay, so 2002, 38, and just a slight difference in part-time work at roughly 29 and 28 hours for women and men respectively. All right. Okay, now comes the fun part. So I'm going to write a summary, and so many times I hear students say, "Oh, but you don't need a summary, okay? Summary, and it's not a conclusion, all right? Not a conclusion." So many times students say, "My teacher said don't write a conclusion for task 1. It's not a conclusion. A conclusion is different than a summary. They both come at the end of the essay, but they contain different kinds of information. Summary is used for expository essays. Conclusions are used for persuasive and narrative essays. Summaries are also used not just for expository, but also for descriptive essays. So descriptive expository essays will have a summary. Persuasive and narrative essays will have a conclusion. So in summary, or you can, if you want, you can say to sum up, the working hours among these countries the continent and genders tend to vary slightly. Interestingly, both the UK and Holland are under the continental mean, but Greece is slightly more in some cases. Okay? And I'm sure you'll agree with me at this point, students, that if we're reading this essay and you have this kind of summary, which is clearly evident from these two tables, you're going to get a higher band score. And that's not just me saying that. The proof is in the pudding. When students learn this skill from us and they have this structure for their task 1, they always report a better writing score than their previous exams, not just by 1 band, but in many cases by 1.5 or even 2 bands. We often have students that are like, "Oh, I got 6.5 band in my writing section. I changed my strategy. I did what you guys said about the overview, introduction, the summary, also task 2, and then 1 month later, they get a band 8.5. Okay, so that's a huge difference. And not only that, but they're in a way better position for university where they know how to write a correct expository and persuasive essay. Okay? All right, and I see that many members have written some more information there. That's fantastic. Students, keep it up. I just wanted to show you this full essay today. Dr. Krishna, yeah, it's okay to say Brit, Dutch, and Greek. That's absolutely, it's the name of the people. So you could use that in this writing. Yeah, for sure. Here we go. Let's read this essay now as a complete essay. Make sure it makes sense. We haven't made any huge errors. The given 2 tables compare the full and part-time employment in Greece, Holland, and Great Britain in 2002 for both men and women, as well as the European means. At first look, it is clear that men worked more hours on average across all of Europe in full-time jobs, as where the inverse is true for part-time positions. In more detail, men worked an hour longer each week in full-time jobs than women in 2002. However, in part-time employment, women worked 2 hours more than, that should be an A, careful with that kind of mistake. This is why we review, than men on average. When looking at the specific nations, Greece had the longest working hours for both part and full-time jobs, not only for men, but also for women. In fact, men worked 2 hours more than the average of the continent at 42.5 hours. In contrast, Here, Dr. Krishna, we could say Brits. Brits worked the least number of hours, except for men in part-time positions, which was slightly lower for Holland at 28.2 hours. The Netherlands had the same number of full-time hours for men and women in 2002 at 38, and just a slight difference in part-time work at roughly 29 hours and 28 hours for women and men, respectively. To sum up, the working hours among these countries, the continent, and genders tend to vary somewhat. Because I've used the word slightly a few times, I want a little bit better flow here, so I'm going to go with somewhat. Okay, it's another way to say slightly, a little bit. Interestingly, both the UK and Holland are under the continental mean, but Greece is slightly more in some cases. All right, that is your Band 9 response to this question. Guarantee you, if you had that question and you wrote that as your answer, you'd get a Band 9. Okay, students, I will post that on our YouTube community comment board as well, so you'll be able to see it there. Bisser, I hope that gave you a lot of insight on what to do when you see these kinds of tables and table comparisons. Okay, and coming up in about 30 minutes, I will host the class for listening, the listening section, part 3 and 4, practice. Great job, everyone. I really loved your writing. Hassan, some really outstanding writing today. That was great. I kept looking back at that. So it'll be up later. I don't think today, Kyber, but sometime over the next couple days, I'll put it up. Again, if you want to see more videos like this and for all other sections of the exam in HD quality as well, of course, visit us at aehelp.com for academic IELTS, gieltshelp.com for general, where we have videos for letter writing, and the code to join the premium package and get 20% off the price is R4TYJ. I'm Adrian. Hopefully, I'll see you in 30 minutes for some listening. Bye for now, everyone.